Hello everybody, it's Lynn from A Bit of Birdsong. I'm making a journal today and I thought I would take you with me through the process in my workshop. This is a place where I have a lot of file folders. I love to use manila file folders as the base of my 1 or even 2 or 3 signature junk journals. Some of the other things I have in this corner are inspirational magazines, a lot of Stampington. I love Stampington magazines, and especially art journaling and Somerset Studio. Up here there is a beautiful old doll case, and in it are some old Edgar Allan Poe books. I have only 9 out of the 10 books in that set. And then that first book that you can see is from a different set. It is still Edgar Allan Poe. This station is a really important part of my journal making. I keep this area clean. It used to be more cluttered, and some of the things that were here were easily incorporated into another part of my workshop. I have my paper cutter and my self-healing mat to cut fabric on. That's a huge part of my journal making process. A lot of the journals I make it's just folded paper, so they're about 8.5 inches tall. So I cut my journal covers, the manila folder, let's say, to about 8 3/4 in height. And then since the pages folded are 5.5 inches, I go to about 5 3/4 this way, so that when I open it, it's a little more than 11 inches. I'm going to be sewing fabric around this, so it's going to come out perfectly to house a one signature junk journal. I recently put up in my workshop this little, it's like a soft structure that hangs from a rod. I believe it is meant to go inside of a closet, but I used that rod to hang a beautiful curtain on, and I decided to hang this here to put my journal cover fabric in. It's rolled up and it gives me the opportunity to see the colors from the outside. I wasn't doing very well with remembering everything I had in stock when everything was just in one box. I love this setup, so let's go ahead and pick out some fabric for the journal cover. Honestly, I thrive with a certain level of chaos, but one of the best things that you can do for yourself in a workshop is to have a place for everything and everything in its place. I keep nothing but my cutting wheels or rotary cutters, I should call them, and scissors here. I have a ruler for cutting a straight edge. I also have a much larger fabric ruler or straight edge that I use sometimes. Having this place set up at this point has made journal making so much easier. It is so much more enjoyable now that I am not trying to work in a tiny space in front of a lot of clutter. I keep papers for my journal making in a couple of different places. I have this stand over to the right of my station here with the cutting mat and the paper cutter, and my sweet Jason bought this for me one night. I didn't know he was going to buy it. I had been mentioning that I would love to have a long arm paper cutter, and he came home from shopping with this, and oh my goodness, it has saved me so much time in the workshop. He is truly always thinking of me, and I cannot tell you how much he means to me. Anyway, back over here, I never spend this much money on anything, except one night we were in Cracker Barrel. This is way before the pandemic, and I saw this beautiful stand to hold paper and files and whatever. I loved the old numbers on it, and you know, it was overpriced, I'm sure, but standing there looking at it, I thought, what are the chances that I'm going to run across this in the thrift store? Probably 0. What are the chances that I'm going to see this in any store over the next, however amount of time? So, and I didn't spend an inordinate amount of money. It was probably $20-something. So I thought, I'm getting it. I'm just getting it because I know I will love it. And I do. These papers are pretty much things that I am thinking of using for journals. Papers that I've put to the side that I like. Book pages. things that I know I want to use as journal pages, and I don't want these things to get mixed up in my big boxes of ephemera. Some of these are pages that have already been cut and just need to be, they need a few more pages added in, and they need to be bound. Another place that I keep paper is over here to my left, so it's easy to just walk right across. I've got wallpaper. I am in the process of purging and kind of starting over, so these drawers are a little bit empty right now, but they hold scrapbook paper, tea-stained paper. I have a variety of papers here, and then actually just coming back across to my station where I work, I have a tray here that's got really large pieces of paper that can be cut down. This is some really nice paper, and I just love having a selection like this to pull from. The calendar is wonderful quality paper, and I am planning to pull some pages from that to use in some journals that I'm working on right now. I'm working on several custom journals and gift journals at one time. This is a cover that was made from a file folder like I cut out earlier. These pieces of fabric on the front and back, I purposefully cut them a little bit off from each other. I wanted this to be more of a kind of a messy, organic feeling journal, and that's the reason for this pocket on the inside, that, you know, the fabric is not an even square piece. You can change up your covers like this. Everything does not have to be perfectly matched. Now, the fabric I just cut for the last journal that I was showing you, it is exactly even. And that is because I want it to be that way. I took the time over at my cutting area to measure it and make sure both pieces are the same. I've already chosen pages for this journal, and I tried to pick theme, color, style, weight, all things that would match and tie in to this. I'm thinking that this would be a good nature journal or writing journal, botanical garden journal, anything like that. That doesn't look like a huge signature, but as people start adding things in, this will get bulkier, and it'll turn into a really nice, beautiful size. I love this image on the front. That's from the very large calendar that I showed you earlier. One of the reasons I wanted to show you this is to tell you something that you should think about when you're making your journals. I love to use just a natural cord for binding. So I have this already picked out. Sometimes I sew a piece of a ribbon or sari silk or tie of some kind to the front of my journal in a way that it kind of goes all the way around. So I'm going to attach it here and here. One of the things to think about though is, do you want to see the binding on the outside, which will help hold this into place here? So you would want to put this on first and then bind the pages in, or do you want the binding, you know, underneath the ribbon that's going to wrap around so that it's on top? You know, if that's the case, you want to bind the pages in and then put this on. And I kind of feel like that's what I want to do. It's going to leave this hanging a little bit loose. I mean, you could put this on first and, you know, move that up and down when you're binding so that you don't put the binding cord through the ribbon. Things like that are definitely something that you can think about and will start thinking about as you bind more and more journals like this. I thought that leaf was really pretty on the front, and especially on top of that ribbon. I think the ribbon just ties everything together. And I may put a button on the front, I may add a fabric flower, I may put some sort of metal plate that's got a saying on it. That is just one of the fun things about making these journals. They are all so different, they're all so personalized. A lot of these journals really showcase the personalities of the people who make them, and I love that about it. I've got a few different awls that I choose from. This one's a little tiny one. I believe it's Amy Tangerine, and I do like that one a lot. Of course, I'm drawn to this old one. It's got a really nice sharp point. Does an awesome job, and who wouldn't love this old handle? So we've got this, we've got our cord, and we've picked out the pages. I have this ribbon that I'm gonna sew onto the outside, and I will be back in just a minute to bind it. I'm going to quickly just glance at these pages that are patterned and make sure that they're all right side up. Nothing is more frustrating than taking the time to bind a journal, you know, poking that all through and then carefully getting the cord to go through and realizing you have a page that is upside down. And I have done that before. You have to start over. You either have to hide it somehow, or you have to just take the pages out and turn it and then punch again. And then, of course, the challenge is to keep everything in the same place. Let me tell you, I went on a walk this morning with my beautiful daughter and my new-ish grandson. He was born about 6 months ago, so he is a pandemic baby. He is so happy, so calm. And let me tell you, he was such a blessing and such a relief. My daughter had pre-eclampsia. She was actually induced because of dangerously high blood pressure, and I'm glad that she was paying attention to things. All of her prenatal visits had been fine. She started to have headaches though, and you know, she was going to her regular prenatal visits, but one of these days she had a headache. She decided to go over to Walmart to their blood pressure machine and get her blood pressure checked, and it was really high. She was worried about it, so she called her doctor's office and they had her come in and they checked it. So the next day she had a headache again, and they were watching her. They said, okay, well, you know, and it went down. They said, let's just keep an eye on it. So she had a headache again the next day. She checked her blood pressure again, and it was way up. So she called again, and they went ahead and started following her much more closely, brought the visits, you know, closer together, and decided to schedule an induction, which is a bit scary. You know, sometimes babies just aren't ready to be here yet. So it's just a judgment call, and I know of situations that have not turned out so well. It's difficult when the baby's not ready to be here yet for whatever reason. So they brought my daughter in on a Tuesday, I think it was. Maybe it was Monday. I can't remember. Anyway, she was in labor for 2 days. They brought her in first thing in the morning. We waited all day. You know, the progress was extremely slow. Her blood pressure was getting dangerously high. Her IV came out twice. She had to have 2 epidurals. She had to have magnesium infusions. We went along all day, and of course I couldn't be with her because of COVID. All of our updates were coming in through sporadic text messages just as she was able to text. And of course her wonderful partner was there with her. He's a great dad and he's a great guy, but I know she wanted me there and I wanted to be there. As the day went on though, it was looking more and more like it was not going to be, there was going to be no baby that day. And my daughter was exhausted. So they dialed down the Pitocin and decided to let her rest overnight. And when she woke up the next morning, you know, here we go again. They fire everything up again. And I'm telling you, little baby was not wanting to come out of there. We went along all day. I mean, you know, and she was exhausted. She was exhausted. Blood pressure high again. Just exhausted from the contractions. Pitocin, I think, is pretty intense. And, you know, I think they don't want you to just eat anything and everything as the delivery gets close. So it wasn't easy. It was so worth it, but it wasn't easy. So this went on all day, and finally that evening, little baby was born, and you would never have known from looking at that baby how long it took for him to get here, and just everything my daughter went through to get him here. That was the most peaceful little angelic face I think I've ever seen, and just what a beautiful baby. But we went walking today. You know, we're still being careful with COVID, but we were outside the whole time, and we did wear our masks a lot of the time. One of the reasons is because it was so cold. And baby Kendall was very bundled up. He was in his stroller in a warm sleeper with, you know, little booties on, and then he was under several blankets, and he had his big winter hat on. He just looked adorable, absolutely adorable. And of course the walk just jogged him right to sleep, jostled, I should say. Now that cord is really thick. I don't know, I have a cord that's not quite so thick, and I do like this. I didn't put it on the camera, on the video, but I stopped and took a look at this and said, is this really something I want to use? But I do, I like this. I'm gonna go ahead with it. So I've bound it. And I've tied it one time. I always put a little spot of glue. I love tacky glue. You see I have more tacky glue. I'm so excited about that. So I'm going to tie it once. I put that little spot of glue, and I'm going to tie it again, and that's going to help this knot to stay tied. You can set your stitches up so that your binding is, you know, hanging here on the outside, or it can hang on the inside, and you can put beads on the inside or the outside. I went ahead and sewed that ribbon into place, and it's tied. Let me untie it and show you. You can see the stitching here and on the outside. I did a straight stitch up and down. I don't think this is going to get, you know, it's not going to be pulled on to the point that it needed a heavy zigzag stitch or anything, but I did go back and forth probably 5 or 6 times. I usually go back, you know, up and down or back and forth enough and just end at the same end. Does that make sense? And then I cut both threads there. Now I want to pick out some beads or charms to go on that cord. And I have a box of journal beads. Now this is a necklace I purchased in a bag of junk, especially for the beads. That is absolutely gorgeous with that. And then look at these large rose beads. That is gorgeous with that as well. Oh my goodness. One of the good things about this really large binding cord is that if you tie a knot under a big hole like that, sometimes you can get the knot big enough so that the bead's not going to slip right over the knot. So all those things are things to think about. That's pretty with that. You know, this is a pretty necklace. I considered not cutting it, but I'm not going to wear this. I'm just not going to wear it. I bought it for the beads, and that's what I'm going to use it for. It's got some gorgeous beads in it. That's a beautiful color. I like the metal. All of these clear beads, that white one. There are even some old wooden beads on here. And I do think that this is an older necklace. So let's keep looking for just a minute and see. All 3 of those are pretty. Another thing you can do is tie a smaller bead underneath a larger bead and tie the knot under that smaller bead. I don't think I want that letter bead. Probably just a plain glass bead underneath. That black is kind of pretty actually. So let's see how that would look. And I think I'm going to need to cut that frayed edge off, or we're never going to get the cord through the... Okay, so this bead appears to be hollow inside, which means that it's sometimes hard, there we go, sometimes it's hard to get the string straight through the bead. I try to tie my knot so that the bead will come up above the actual journal top when you've got it laying flat, and that way you can open it and journal without this bead being underneath. But let's go back and see if we can get this smaller bead on there. It might be too small. It is, so I think we're just going to have to go with this. I wonder if this one will work. That one will work. And let's see here. That's pretty. And then on the other one, I feel like we might have an issue. Yeah, that one's got a blockage somehow. So that's too bad. I don't even remember where I got this bead. It's funny, I can see through, but not all the, it's not the same diameter all the way through. So that bead is a no-go. But we have some other beads to choose from. Not that one. Not that one. I think we might bite the bullet and go ahead and cut this. Let's do it. Let's just do it and be done with it. That's what I bought it for. And it, again, it was in a bag of junk. I don't think people, nobody looking at that bag of junk was thinking about those as journal beads until I came along and I said, ooh, I would like to buy that. I'll save this for something. I like to make jewelry out of junk, and that'll go in with those supplies. Let's see if we can get this through here. Yeah. Ooh, that's pretty. I like that. So we're going to tie this one a little bit lower and make sure that's far enough down the string that, you know, we want it to be able to lay above the journal and not get in the way of writing when you got your journal laying open. We're going to tie this one up a little bit higher. I think we only need one knot on that side. So those are kind of some heavy beads, but I like those. I think they're really pretty. Now let's keep looking at how we can embellish the outside. Ooh, I have a few I forgot to put away. Let's drop those in. Let's put that needle away. That velvet leaf is really pretty. Let's look at some flower petals and leaves. This is just leaves, and I do have more of these old velvet ones, which I think, oh, this is just gorgeous. I love that. And I would just, you know, stitch right over the top. I do have those. That's just too big. I might make a journal card though to go in the journal with one of those. We have some pretty mossy things in there. That's a bigger one. Let's see how that one does. That's really pretty. Okay, let's go with these. I put the leaves on, and I don't know, I'm just wondering if it would be pretty with a button. That right away, I love that. What do you think about that? That one's kind of pretty. And that's not bad. I'm going to save this one because it's a nice sturdy metal, and I would rather use this since it has, I believe that's called a shank. So that would be good to use when you have something that needs to wrap around a button. Honestly, I'm going to go with this one. One of the things you end up with when you use the file folders as a journal cover is a bunch of these offcuts or just the end pieces. In order not to waste them, I'm going to go ahead and use a couple of punches that I have. One makes tiny little folders, and this was a gift from one of my subscribers. Alejandrina sent me a couple of beautiful punches a while back. This one makes tiny little file folders. So adorable. And then this one makes tiny little envelopes, and it shows you exactly where to put the folds on the front of the stamp. So I'm going to go ahead and fold this one up. Take this over to the desk and glue it together, but you can see that makes a perfect little envelope, and we will have these bits of ephemera to go out with our junk journal. Okay, we're getting really near the end of putting this journal together. I might want to pick out some things for charms, and that is why I have this box out. I keep all sorts of journal jewelry and journal embellishments, things that I might want to sew on the front or use for charms. So I'm just going to pick out a few things that would go nicely onto paper clips and embellish some of the pages. The drawer in the bottom holds more things that I use to, frames, metal embellishments for the front, some cool handles that I'm going to be using soon, and even some little book plates. And we might actually use a book plate before the day is over. So I'm going to take one of those out. Let's take a look at the completed journal. I've been sitting here working on it. I'm so happy with the way it turned out. For the charms, for the beads, you remember that we picked out the large rose looking bead and then a glass bead underneath it. And then we have this really pretty bead from the necklace. You could move that up a little bit and tie another knot under it if you wanted to. It's a little bit lower than I thought it was. It's okay though. It just depends on how you want it to be. I put a rusty safety pin on the spine as well. That is just poked through the fabric and the file folder underneath. I didn't get it quite centered. I'm going to pull it out and center it so that you can see how this is done, and if you want to take this out, you can take it out. I kind of went a little sideways with it. You need to be careful working with these. The last thing you want to do is put a rusty safety pin into your finger. I'm going to put it back through the same hole. The bottom one is fine, but I just went a little to the side with it, and I want to bring that back more to the center. There we go. I like that better. Anyway, there is a little bottle on there, and it's got a cork inside that I've put some glue on that. I hope it stays into place, and there's some moss inside. That's dried moss. It's been dried for a long time, so there shouldn't be any condensation in there. We have the button on the front and the really pretty leaves. This is the tie that we chose. So then getting inside, there's just a lot of really pretty paper and a lot of room for writing. There's a non-rusted safety pin here with a pretty bead charm, a tiny little tag in here. It's got the bird on it. The bird on that side is a little bit faded. It just looks kind of old. And that's actually 3 punched tags glued together to make it thick and to give it some extra dimension. I've done stamping throughout the pages and some distressing around the edges. That is a copy of an old card, CDV card that I had that was from the late 1800s. There's a little bird that I stamped and then painted that a little bit with some watercolor. This is a page from a journal kit that I did a couple of years ago. There's a really old photograph there. It is so faded, but you can see the little girl in the dress. I cannot even tell what she is standing in front of. Maybe a building of some kind, but it looks a little rounded, so I'm not sure about that. There's a butterfly stamped on that page, kind of some graph paper. It says Journey here, and there's a stamp with a mushroom on it. There are a few charms through here. I'm just going to keep flipping. Now this is fun. These are the little envelopes that we made. I went ahead and glued those together and distressed those, and inside there's a piece of paper with a journal prompt. This one says, what makes you happy? So if you need a little journal prompt or something to get you started writing, there is one in that tiny little envelope. Again, stamping, pages to write on, some distressing, and that page is interesting. That's just, they're both sewn down. You could slide something under there, like if you wanted to put a pretty picture under there. I think this piece of paper came from Gracie. I think that's right. And there's another little bead charm. This is just a book page I put in. I love to try sketching plants and things like that and watercolor. So I thought it would be fun to have some inspiration for that in here. Another beautiful stamp and alcohol ink. This is one of the little folders that we made from the leftover file folder. That's how we used to play write in the 70s, when we would play like teacher and stuff, and we would make these big block letters. It looks like the writing of the day, and like the peace signs and t-shirts and things that you would see this on. Anyway, that's just in there for some fun. Has a butterfly stamped on it. And then, so this page is a lot of fun. That is an old picture that's torn out of a scrapbook. On the other side, there's a picture of a cow. I couldn't tear those apart without really tearing everything up. But that is put in with a couple of brads, and the little washer underneath that says Discover. This is some interesting paper here. And there is another one of the folders. When you open this one up, it says Love. And you can see this has got kind of a grungy, distressed look. This would be a really nice nature journal. A couple of old book pages. I believe those are in French. And then there's a little wren stamped there. Jay has given me a lot of stamps over time, and that one might have come from Jay. I really love the nature stamps that you sent to me, Jay. And here's another little journal prompt. Let's see what this one says. This one says, hello. Who is your best role model? So that can really make you stop and think. Might get you started on a tangent, and you would just write for days and days. Part of an old envelope and more stamping. This is a pretty image that I printed out for a project I was working on. You could write something on the back of that. And this is from a little die cut that I just ran the brayer over and used it like a stencil, and then filled in everywhere else. I wrote airmail up here. Just, it looks like a silhouette of a swallow, and just a lot of blank paper. I am working on several journals right now, and I'm going to be finishing them all up at one time and doing some videos, so stay tuned. This is the first one. Here is the other side of that piece of paper, and I do think that is from Gracie. But it would be funny. It wouldn't be funny. It could be funny. It would be fun to put some things under here as well. Butterflies, and what is this? Oh, this is the third and final journal prompt. Hello. There we go. That says, what is your favorite flower? Maybe I don't need to fold that up so small. No, that's better. Okay. And that's just a piece of wallpaper that you can journal on. And here's another book page, the botanical images. Another beautiful stamp. You know, I meant to do that. I love to take these postmark stamps and then stamp over the vintage stamps that I glue into the books. Almost done. That's a little drawing that I did, and you can see the little circle around her eye. That is so popular. I love that right now. Tiffany at Southern Gals Designs, she does this from time to time. I've seen others do it as well, but her art is really distinctive, and she's recently been in a copy of Art Journaling magazine, which is Really cool. And there's part of an old print. You can see it was part of a flower. And more stamping. There's one of my little signature birds that I put in a lot of the thank you cards that go out. There is a book plate if you want to put your name in here. And just a few more pieces of paper in the back that you can journal on. This is a piece of wallpaper. And here is one of the rusty washers that I have found. There's my stamp in the back, and underneath we've got a piece of fabric that had an immigration type stamp on it. It says Immigration Office, Dublin Airport. So that is that. I love this journal. I love how it turned out. It's got some really pretty items in it. Stay tuned. I'm going to be showing you a custom journal really soon. And this one's available in the shop. Bye for now.